From your perspective, is it better to have technology policy from a state level on AI or federal?
Well, if you look at all the introduced state laws, there are over 1,000 apparently that are out there floating, in addition to the ones that have been enacted. They're just so diverse. There are like 6 or 7 buckets of the type of state law, including disclosure mandates, algorithmic discrimination, notice and bias requirements. So you have this matrix of 50 states times 6 or 7 buckets, and that's a patchwork. What you see also is a race to the bottom. So the most conservative rule might rule them all. And so really it is a matter of time and effort for small and large companies to know what these policies are. The discussion mimics a lot of the privacy debates that we had 10 years ago and still do. But really, it's difficult to see innovation move forward when you have all these state laws.
Sarah, the mechanism of an EO is not that surprising if you look at the prior initiatives of this White House. In November, a big push by the White House on Congress to include a federal moratorium on state AI laws in a particular piece of legislation. That effort not successful. Explain why that was important, please.
Sure. So you're seeing this post today because 4 days ago, apparently the state law moratorium was dropped from the NDAA defense spending bill. I think Representative Scalise mentioned that it wouldn't be included. There was a push in November to include it in the NDAA, and that was after in July there was a push to include it in the spending bill, the BBB, Big Beautiful Bill. And so there has been discussion, a lot of buzz on the Hill, how to include this moratorium in legislation. But, Congress thought it's not the right vehicle to include a moratorium. And so then you see this EO. The draft proposal was floated 3 weeks ago. It's called Eliminating State Law Obstruction of National AI Policy. You can read it. It includes a litigation task force, evaluation of state laws, restriction of funding, and also involves Commerce Department, the FCC, FTC, DOJ.
Yeah.
And so that was the draft. We don't know if all that is in the actual, but they floated it for review.
Sarah, I want to push it forward a little bit of what actually is necessary, because it's all very well and good saying we don't want it from a state level, but many would hark back to what happened with social media, where ultimately the big companies were left to regulate themselves because no federal policy was ever enacted. Do you have optimism that there will be some rules of the road, some guardrails from a federal perspective, or will it just be pushed back on a state level?
It's hard to say about the harms of technology because, yes, there are harms, but who can really know what will be the really emergent or difficult harms out of thousands of possibilities? You don't want to stop all of them and all innovation. And so, is government the right venue to discover that? Really, you see it through litigation. And in Europe, they've taken the approach, well, let's do blanket regulation. And, that hasn't turned out very well. As you can see, people are pushing back against EU regulations right now. So it really is a matter of perspective. The Biden AI executive order was rolled back, and that is a perspective that's more precautionary. And so the Trump EO is taking the other approach, saying we need light touch regulation. So I think, and compare that with China, I don't think we hear about regulation for AI there.
Right.
And so that's the comparison.